This is Operation Insoak. In episode 1, we toured this 1,000-acre ranch near Cuero, Texas, and saw firsthand how quickly rainwater moves off the land. We framed the challenge: how do we keep more of that rain where it falls? In episode 2, we discussed design, how we approached the land, what we planned, and the strategies we put in place. Finally, in episode 3, we are revisiting the site after some recent rain to see if our plan and our hard work paid off. This video is made possible by our patrons. Their support allows us to continue to share our educational resources, knowledge, and make these videos for you to enjoy. To get access to additional content from our projects, Q&A priority, and more, click the link below.
This is a bridge we put in probably 30 plus 40 years ago. We had an old wooden bridge that lasted for a long time that you could see air in the post. They were so rotten, it was barely holding up. We put 2 by 12 or 4 by 12 planks across it to kind of hold it up, but it got really scary. So we decided we need a new bridge. We got this 30, 40 years ago. This is an 18-wheeler train car. And we shored it up, putting I-beams in the ground, concreted them in, concrete ends of each bridge for their approach, put dirt around it, but after many floods, we started losing a little erosion, losing the dirt around all our concrete beams. So we come in here and put in 30 tons of rock, I don't know how many rocks, to shore it all up and to stop the erosion. So hopefully it'll work. We get a flood through here every 3 to 5 years. It'll be over this bridge 3 or 4 feet. So it takes a lot of water, takes on a lot of water.
So this is one of the simplest ways to prevent erosion. You just put down rock, and the bigger the rock, the more it's going to resist movement when the water hits it. So we've actually got some larger rocks under here. We did this in 2 phases. So years ago we came in and we did some work here and we put in a layer of bigger rocks, and then we got these smaller 3 to 5 inch rocks and we filled in between those and we put a whole layer around it. And you know, these are going to move, they're going to settle, sediment is going to get pushed into them, and over time it's going to kind of knit it together as well as the plants growing. You can see there was poison ivy all up under here and it's already starting to grow back, but those are actually going to help hold this together. So the poison ivy has some function there, even though it's not fun to try to get under there. But yeah, we hope that this will make this bridge last indefinitely once all the sediment fills in between the rocks, and that this thing can continue to serve as a way to cross this creek here for as long as it lasts, as long as the metal lasts anyway.
This is Dehanus brick, which you can't see there, which in Dehanus, Texas, I think, is where they used to make brick. And we tore down a warehouse in Cuero, Texas, and built a house, a barn, sidewalks, and all kinds of stuff. And this was all the leftover scrap that's been sitting around for 20 years in a dirt pile. So we have taken most of the broken brick that we can't utilize and threw it down here to make a little multi-rock dam.
So this is the
multi-brick dam, not a one-rock dam, but a multi.
This is the very last of it, huh? So you guys have reused it that many times?
Yeah, there's still some more.
When you knocked down the warehouse, was that with machines, or did someone like disassemble that by hand?
I wasn't there, so I can't tell you how they did it, but we had to hand clean every one of these bricks. Somebody had to hand clean every one of these bricks to build a house out of it. My dad built a house. We have the barn up here that we built, and so.
Well, I like that you're reusing the materials and that it's like a historic material too. I mean, y'all are really rooted out here in this area, and it is cool to have all these different stories and kind of the generational handoff. But I'm happy to be using these bricks and the soil and everything that we got scooped up with them to build these Insoak features. Like you were saying, it's like a one rock dam, which we've built out here with different sizes of rocks, so we're experimenting, seeing what works better. Usually they don't have so much soil in them when we first put them in, but I think that'll actually make it hold water better. It doesn't have to fill with sediment. Right. But we'll see how big of the flood we get and whether that pushes some of that dirt down, or whether it moves a little bit or not. But I think as soon as we get a big rain in here, I mean, there's going to be 2 foot of water backing up many hundreds of feet, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Just held by this one little thing, which was, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 dump trailer loads of this material. So it was really only a couple hours of work with a skid steer and a dump trailer. Yeah. And here we go.
And at the end of the property, I did another one, and it has worked. It's termed converted a 1.5 foot wide stream of water to a 6 foot wide stream of water, backed up. And yes, it's within the legal limits.
Yeah, checked out. Yeah, there's a pretty large limit for Texas. I know it's like a couple acre feet of water before you have to get in touch with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
But I think the theme of this project is looking for the pinch points where a lot of water moves through, channelized, and how do we slow that down and soak it in. And I think another theme of the project that I'm noticing is not being afraid to have it look messy, at least at first, because a lot of the stuff we're doing here, it doesn't look picture perfect. It's not something you're going to see on the cover of a magazine, but it's got a function.
Right.
And it's going to create beauty by creating more water availability, which is going to help plants grow, which is going to help everything else, right?
Right. Yeah, and end of the summer, all this stuff's going to migrate this way. There'll be all kinds of foliage growing up in there, and that's just creating more of a slowing the water currents down, catching debris and sediment and building it up and making it stronger and keep the sediment from going downstream and letting the water soak into our property.
Seems like water is the biggest limiting factor here. Like when it's raining, when there's water, everything's growing and it's beautiful and it's nice. When we dry up, nothing grows. So if we can just create that more consistent water availability, it really helps everything else in the ecosystem to do better.
When I was a kid, this was all water all the time. It was 2 foot of water. I fished right here off the bridge, or off the old bridge, and droughts and springs drying up, and over the years, it's been dry for 30 plus years, 40 years probably. So it's one of the things I'm trying to do is rehydrate all the springs so I can get my creek flowing again. So it's beautiful to come down here and just sit on the edge of the bridge with a cane pole and catch little perch as a kid.
How cool if your grandkids or their grandkids or some future generation could do that again.
Right.
I'm curious, what do you think? I know you've done a lot of experimentation out here. You've done all sorts of cool stuff as far as like learning how to steward this land in a way that will bring the water back. If you had to tell your neighbors and the other people that are stewarding this watershed with you what you've learned, what would be one thing that they could do to help bring the springs back?
Rotational grazing, letting the grass grow. On your trip down here, driving seeing all the ranches on the side of the road, probably 80% of them that you look at, just notice that if they have cattle on them, it's been overgrazed. You'll see the ground looks like this, and it's springtime. People just overgraze. Water hits the ground, it runs off, doesn't recharge the springs. So number one thing is letting my grass grow via rotational grazing, let it grow tall, get deep roots, so when it does rain, I'm soaking it all in. That's the fastest way. I mean, building ponds and dams and so forth is also part of it, but that's a small, very small feature. I mean, every inch that you're soaking in on an acre is 27,000 gallons. Well, you got 1,000 acres, there's 27 million gallons, right? Whatever that, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, 27 million gallons. So.
And then you multiply that by 36 inches of rain per year on an average year anyway, and that's a lot of water.
Right.
Yeah, I think about it as like the dams and the ponds and all these things and the brush dams, those are almost like second line, third line of defense.
Right.
The first line of defense is the soil is right where the rain hits the ground.
Right.
And if we can get it to soak in right there, then that's the best. But then, in a really heavy rain event, some of it's going to flow off, and then that's when we go to these second, third lines of defense.
Right.
Or if it's popping out of a spring, if we get enough of it to soak into the ground where it hits, then it'll pop out of springs, and then we'll slow it down here again.
Right, right. Yeah, so like I said, it floods every 3 to 5 years. Hopefully every 1 to 3, 4 inch rain we're soaking in, but when that big major flood comes and all my neighbors' water's coming down here, I want to do whatever I can to catch all of it. And recharge this area, keep it from going downstream and rehydrating my land. Hopefully they would do the same upstream, and that would minimize all the flooding down here. I mean, if you get a 10-inch rain, this water's over this bridge in a matter of a couple hours.
Yeah, I
It
remember
goes up
seeing
fast.
pictures of that. Well, maybe we'll cut some in so the other people can see it too, but it's amazing how full this gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was
exactly what I wanted to do.
that was a good adaptation to put the brush in the Insoak features as well. We weren't thinking of that at the first of the project till you brought it up and said, you know, cattle are going to get in there and they're going to make it into a mud pit anywhere that we create water, so we got to put some brush in it. So I think that's a good detail, and it seems like, you know, this is going to be something that comes up on anyone's land. Wherever you've got a little road that crosses the creek, if you raise it up, you're going to have a natural feature, and so you might as well turn it into something that is going to benefit your land instead of be a problem.
Right.
All right, so we're up on higher ground here on the Insoak project with Jason. So we've gone out of the main creek and we've gone up much higher on the property, and we've started working down this secondary creek that leads into that main creek, and we've started to interrupt the flow of water. In this particular location, there was already an interruption because there's a road that crosses this secondary creek, so there was already some water backing up there, but it was starting to erode right here, and so we armored that with rock. And there were a bunch of trees here that you know, there's plenty of trees, and so we started to harvest those trees and lay them down into the creek to help slow down the water and catch the organic matter. And we put in a line of T-posts right there to reinforce it so that when there is a big flood, it doesn't just pick this material up and float it downstream. So right here, you know, it's very subtle, and this is an ephemeral water feature, so really it's great for amphibians. We're not going to have fish in here or anything like that, but it just backs up, you know, maybe a foot and a half of water. Could back it up 50 or 100 feet, it's hard to say, but for just a little bit of work here, we're backing up a lot of water, and then that really creates an ecological niche. And you know, the cattle can still come get a drink, other things, deer, whatever else can come get a drink, but the brush that we laid in it helps to keep them from actually climbing down in there and just creating a mud pit.
Yeah, well, most people don't want any of the mesquite or weesatch, and which we really don't like them either, but they are a resource here now. So they're a resource of shade once we prune them up. They're a resource of organic material to put down here in the areas to keep from washing away. It's a resource to put in bare ground anywhere else on the property that you need it to recover to keep the cows off of it. And it's a unlimited resource. It just you trim it, it will come back full force and give you more. Just be a non-stop provider of resources. So instead of trying to fight every bit of it, is we're utilizing some of it. Yeah. The hackberries, I don't know how other people feel about hackberries. I'll probably offend somebody on the camera here, but I hate them. Because they grow up in the fence lines, birds eat the berries, and it's great for birds, but they grow everywhere, and they're kind of like the mesquite, they grow up all over the place. So I have a bountiful supply of them, and so we've trimmed them up and cut them down, and they'll come back. We'll have plenty more.
Great for birds, bad for fences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they get big, they become a weak tree, then they start cracking and falling over and breaking in half. And as a tree lover, I hate to say it, but I hate them.
They're one of those pioneer species that comes in and helps lay the groundwork for your pecans and oaks and stuff like that. So it's good in the ecological succession process that they grow up and then they die quickly and fall down, and they start to create that organic matter forest floor to make way for those more long-lived trees. But yeah, you do have a lot of them out here, and it's funny because on one project that we're working with you, we're planting trees, and then we come out here and we're cutting trees down, but we're doing it in a very intentional way, and we're pruning trees up, but it's like polar opposites. You know, we're doing everything in our power to get as many trees growing as possible with maximum biodiversity, and then we're out here with chainsaws and heavy equipment doing, you know, something very different. Yeah, I wanted to double tap on, you were saying people think it looks messy when you put brush out on the ground, and I encounter that a lot too with so many of our clients, and especially if you've got a smaller property and your neighbors are looking right at you, you know, you don't want to be the messy one, right? But when we look at how forests build soil and how they go from being young, immature forests with a bunch of pokey, thorny undesirable trees that, you know, the ranchers and folks out here really don't like, to being beautiful, long-lived trees. It's through that process of dropping branches on the ground and creating that forest floor litter of woody material and leaves. So we're really just speeding that process up here. Right. At some point, do you ever come in and then clean that up, or does it just decompose and you know, work its way back into the ground?
Haven't gotten that far yet, but you know, if we get an abundance of forage out here, we might burn. We used to do that pretty frequently, but I've cut that way back. But we might, you know, 5 or 6 years, and we have lots of rain, then more than we can chew down, then we'll burn it. Otherwise, go over it with a shredder one day. But I'm fine with it. The cows kind of spread it apart, and they can still get in the tops of the grass, and they keep the grass tall, so it just keeps growing back rapidly because they can't chew it down very far. So I don't know what I'll do with it. So here's a great example. I mean, you just took a video a while ago of people are going to say that is ugly. Here in the ditch. Well, that's there's going to be grass growing in there because there's no cows walking through it. It's going to be catching sediment. It's going to slow water down. It's going to stop our erosion because of the grass growing on the banks and the cows not tromping it down. So eventually that's going to decompose and go on down to the next dam. So beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, we're making a temporary trade-off of what is sort of a mess, if you want to look at it that way, or maybe appears disorganized to someone who doesn't understand the intention, in order for a future result. Oh yeah, we got some water in this one.
Looky there.
Now I'm being like
hey,
one
the
of the
brush
cattle.
is to keep the animals out of there.
All right, so this is one of our bigger Insoak features that we built here. We've got an earthen dam back there. We scooped out the material from within the creek. We built that up. We armored it with rocks so that when it overflows, it's not gonna erode and lose that. And then we put this brush in here to keep the cattle out of it and to help it regrow. We also seeded this whole area with dam wall recovery mix from Native American Seed Company. And you can see we got a little over an inch of rain out here, maybe an inch and a half, according to the neighbor. And we've already got water standing in here. I'm gonna guess that it's about 8 inches deep over there. And so you could just imagine if we actually got a real big rain event that made the creek flow, this thing would be probably full to about 4 or 5 feet deep. And it would back it up the creek until we reach the same level as the spillway there. So we could be backing up, you know, potentially thousands or hundreds of thousands of gallons of water for what was basically a day's work with a skid steer and an excavator, some rock, and some chainsaw work. All right, so here is a little Insoak feature. This is one of the smallest ones, and you can see we didn't get brush all up in it like we did on the other ones, and the cattle have been having a heyday in here. It actually smells different. It smells more like cattle and manure and urine, and you can just see that they're gonna make a mess. This is never gonna revegetate. You know, it's probably attracting more wild hogs as well, this kind of turned up earth smell. So I think this is just a really good example of how important it is to make that brush armoring on these features and even, you know, make a little bit of a mess, because it's actually going to prevent the long-term mess if you make the mess with the brush, and then you're going to get those native grasses growing up through it, and that brush will actually kind of slowly disappear and sink down into the earth.
We are 30 yards away from the one that's all tore up. Same cattle can access this, and there's a few tracks right through there. This has been left clean.
I remember at the time that I was dragging this brush over from 20 feet over that way that, you know, it was a bit of a chore. I was doing it by hand because the machines were busy building another feature down the creek, and man, I'm glad I did it. It was absolutely worth the extra work to just keep this thing from getting all torn up. We just do our land management based on aesthetics, then we're not going to do any of the ugly things that help, and we're going to promote the pretty things that have negative outcomes. So that's one of the lessons that I'm learning over time, is like, you cannot let aesthetics alone drive the conversation of what we do for land management.
Right. Yeah, and the land aesthetics is where, as you'll see driving down the highway, where people want their property mowed and pretty and trees pruned, and they don't want tall grass and weeds and diversity out there. They want a golf course. And as our land gets more segmented up into, goes from 1,000 to 2 500s to a bunch of 40 acres to a bunch of 10 acres, then everybody mows those 10 acres, and we're losing all our Insoak. We're losing all our diversity, we're losing all our wildlife habitat. But it's not going to stop. Or the segmentation or fragmentation is not going to stop. So you have to try to convince people that this is a different kind of beauty. They don't need they need the deep rough, not the putting green.
Yeah, we're on a campaign to make tall grass, native grass cool again, and not just the turf lawns that are cut low and completely monocultured out. So I'm right there with you.
Weather patterns are changing, and you can argue that all you want, but deep grass, trees, holds moisture in, attracts rain, recovers more quickly for the cattle to regenerate. Means cools the temperature down. The temperature of the soil is going to be a lot cooler. You can walk through the pasture here versus walking across a pavement or somebody's pasture that's light pavement. The soil gets up to 140 degrees. Well, this soil is never going to get up to 140 degrees. Maybe in spots like this, you know, these bare spots, but in that grass, in the middle of summer, it's going to be 90 degrees or less, and hopefully 85 degrees, you know, depending on how good your soil is. And it's going to be sitting there retaining that moisture. So you're not losing all your grass.
So we're on one side of your family ranch where there's a lot more trees and there's a lot more tall native grasses and biodiversity. And then there's another side across the road where it's mostly just Bermuda grass right now. I know you've been working on that for a long time, but you were saying earlier that you've actually noticed for your whole life a difference in how much rainfall you get on those two sides?
Yes.
That seems incredible.
And it happens every time. We have 6 different rain gauges, all the exact same brands, you know, and the wide open. And we measure the rain all over the ranch, and we'll probably get more of them just to see even further where we're getting more rain. But consistently, every time, this will get 10 to 20% more rain than across the road. It's been happening since I was a little kid. My grandfather said the same thing. Across the road gets less rain. And I've never tracked it until the last couple of years. You know, just thinking, you know, not really, you know, just, but it's every time. Every rain, we get more rain over here. And that's, we're not talking about 10 miles across, we're talking a 1 mile from one end to the other. That's not very far.
Yeah, it seems like there's a critical mass when you get up into, let's say 500 acres or somewhere thereabouts, you know, a couple hundred acres, you can actually start to create that transpiration effect where when there's potential precipitation above you, because you've got transpiration coming up from all the plants beneath, it helps that cloud to want to release the rainfall or release more of the rainfall. I've also heard that transpiration effect called flying rivers recently, like the moisture flying up from the ground to intercept the clouds and create rainfall, called flying rivers.
Right.
So if we could see that, I think that might change how we manage land as well. If we could actually see the transpiration, that would be pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, there's all kind of videos on that, how the grass and the trees all create the biotic pump that's going to pull all the rain to you. Yeah. So for everybody that's complaining I don't get any rain, well, if your pasture looks like that, well, because you're not creating a biotic pump.
And that concludes the first phase of Project Insoak. We hope you enjoyed this series and learned as much as we did in the process of making it. As this project progresses, we will make update videos to show the progress and impact that this work is making over time. Thanks once again to our patrons, as well as all of our subscribers, for allowing us to document and show the work we do.
All right, hey, thanks guys. Appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to learn more about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, you can hop over to our website. There's tons of good articles. You can join our newsletter. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. We'd love to see you there and answer your questions. Thanks again. Enjoy.